So, how to proceed? Senator Bingaman's first reaction when I told him I was coming to Oak Ridge to talk about clean energy independence and a new Manhattan project, his first reaction, well, was maybe we need several mini Manhattan projects. He suggested as an example the 14 grand challenges for engineering in the 21st century that have been laid out by former MIT President Chuck Vest, the president of the National Institute of Engineering. 3 of those 14 grand challenges for engineering involve energy. I agree with Senator Bingaman and with Chuck Vest. Congress doesn't do comprehensive well, as was demonstrated by the collapse of the comprehensive immigration bill. Step-by-step solutions or different tracks toward the same goal are easier to digest. They have fewer surprises, and they seem to cost less. And of course, the original Manhattan Project itself proceeded along several tracks toward the same goal. So here are the criteria I would suggest for grand energy challenges. 1, grand consequences. 2, the United States uses 25% of all the energy in the world, so interesting solutions for small problems producing small results should be part of some other project. Real scientific breakthroughs. This is not about things we already know how to do. This is not about, for example, drilling offshore for oil or natural gas in an environmentally clean way, or even about building a new generation of nuclear power plants. We already know how to do those things, and in my opinion, we ought to be doing it. 5 years. Grand challenges should put the United States within 5 years firmly on a path to clean energy independence so that goal can be achieved within a generation. I know we can't reach clean energy independence in 5 years, but I also know that if we focus, we can be on a path toward clean energy independence within a generation if we'll do the things we need to do in the next 5 years. Family budget. Solutions need to fit the family budget, and cost of different solutions need to be compared. And finally, consensus. We have to agree. The Augustine panel that drafted the Gathering Storm report wisely avoided some germane topics, such as excessive litigation, upon which they couldn't agree, and they figured Congress couldn't either. So they made 20 recommendations that were important and critical and urgent, upon which they thought we ought to be able to agree, and for the most part, after 2 years, we did. So here is where I invite your help. Rather than having members of Congress proclaim these challenges or asking scientists alone to suggest them, I believe there needs to be some preliminary discussion, which I'd like to begin today, including about whether the criteria I just suggested are correct. Then Congress can pose to scientists, such as the Oak Ridge Lab or the National Academies or others, questions about the steps to take in these 5 years toward certain objectives. To begin the discussion, I suggest asking what steps Congress and the federal government should take during the next 5 years toward these 7 grand challenges so that the United States would be firmly on the path toward clean energy independence within a generation. Number 1, make plug-in electric cars and trucks commonplace. In the 1960s, H. Ross Perot, you'll remember him. H. Ross Perot noticed that when banks in Texas locked their doors at 5 p.m., they also turned off their big new computers. So Perot visited the banks, bought their idle nighttime computer time, and made a deal with states, including Tennessee, to manage Medicare and Medicaid data. Banks made money, states saved money, and Perot made $1 billion. Now, idle nighttime bank computer capacity in the 60s reminds me of idle nighttime power plant capacity in 2008. This is why. The Tennessee Valley Authority has 7,000 or 8,000 megawatts, the equivalent of 7 or 8 nuclear power plants, or about 15 coal plants, of unused electric capacity most nights. Beginning in 2010, Nissan, Toyota, General Motors, and Ford, and I've talked to all their executives, will sell electric cars that can be plugged into wall sockets. FedEx is already using hybrid delivery trucks. Carlos Ghosn, the chief executive of Nissan, told me that they intend to market a pure electric car that will travel 100 miles per charge, and he intends for Nissan to be the leading manufacturer of electric cars in the world. Toyota, of course, already has its Prius, and all that has to be done is plug it in. That's a hybrid car. TVA could offer smart meters, many utilities do around America, that would allow its nearly 9 million customers to plug in their vehicles to fill up at night for only a few dollars in exchange for the customer agreeing to pay more for electricity between 4 and 10 p.m. when the grid is busy. 60% of Americans drive less than 30 miles a day. Those Americans could drive a plug-in electric car or truck without using a drop of gasoline. By some estimates, there's so much idle electric capacity in power plants at night that over time we could replace 3/4 of our light vehicles with plug-ins. That could reduce our overseas oil bill from $500 billion to $250 billion a year, and it could do it all without building one new power plant. I know that here at Oak Ridge, you're doing some study about what the spare capacity of our electric power plants is. In other words, we have the plugs, the cars are coming, all we need is the core. Too good to be true? Haven't U.S. presidents back to Nixon promised revolutionary vehicles? Yes, but times have changed. Batteries are better, gas is $4, we're mad about sending dollars overseas, worried about climate change and clean air, and car manufacturers are interested. And customers have already bought 1 million hybrid vehicles and are waiting in line to buy more even without the plug-in. Down the road is the prospect of a hydrogen fuel cell hybrid vehicle with 2 engines, neither of which uses a drop of gasoline. Still, there are obstacles. Expensive batteries make the additional cost per electric car $8,000 to $11,000 per car. Smart metering is not widespread. There will be increased pollution from the operation from the coal plants at night. We know how to get rid of the sulfur, nitrogen, and mercury pollutants, and we need to do it anyway. But we haven't yet found a way to get rid of the carbon produced by widespread use in coal-burning power plants, which brings me to the second grand challenge. Number 2, make carbon capture and storage a reality for coal-burning power plants. This was one of the National Institute of Engineers' great challenges, and there may be solutions other than underground storage, such as using algae to capture carbon. Interestingly, the Natural Resources Defense Council, one of the most aggressive environmental organizations in America, argues that after conservation, coal with carbon recapture is the best option for clean energy independence because it provides for the growing power needs of the U.S. and will be easily adopted by other countries. NRDC worries about coal plants in China and India polluting our air more than we do. 3, make solar power cost competitive with power from fossil fuels. This is a second of the National Institute's grand challenges. Solar power, despite 50 years of trying, produces 1/100th of 1% of America's electricity. The cost of putting solar panels on homes averages $25,000 to $30,000, and the electricity produced for the most part can't be stored. Now there's new photovoltaic research as well as promising solar thermal power plants which capture the sunlight using mirrors, turn heat into steam, store the steam underground until the customer needs the power generated from the steam.